Hello, hello, hello. It's afternoon for me. I'm hosting this LinkedIn audio event from Accra. I see there's a few of you that are here in the audience. Really excited to see you. Thank you so much for joining. If you would like to contribute, because this is really meant to be an engaging and interactive conversation. I want to hear your perspective. I want to hear your prediction. Please make sure that you invite yourself to the top, right? Please make sure that you ask to speak so that you can join, because I want to make sure that I have an opportunity to hear everyone's perspective. I'm really excited about today's topic, really excited about all of you joining me today, because this is actually my first LinkedIn audio event. I tend to do lives. I am recording this, so there will be a recording, but I tend to do lives with video. So this is the first time I'm doing it just audio. So I'm really excited to see all of you in here listening, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your perspective and the trends you think all of us should keep in mind for this year as well. So just once again, thank you so much for joining me today. You could be anywhere, you could be listening to anything, but you're here joining me, and I really, really appreciate it. Once again, this is an opportunity for us to connect, to learn, to share. Please raise your hand if you want to ask a question or share your perspective. I'd love to share a bit of my perspective and hear your thoughts. If you have any questions, you're welcome to raise your hand as well. But just as a quick introduction to what I do, I typically actually spell out my name. So my name is Akua. My dad's from Ghana. He calls me Ekuya. My mom's from the US. She calls me Akua. And I grew up mostly in Francophone West Africa and North Africa. And typically people there called me Aqua. I'm a certified executive coach, recognized facilitator and speaker, and also host of the Open Door Conversations podcast. And I love to work with high achieving and multi-talented entrepreneurial leaders, even if they have introverted tendencies, experience bouts of self-doubt or analysis paralysis on their leadership. And I have sort of a 3-step process that I take them through to really help them unlock their leadership and really be able to step up to the next level of whatever leadership position that they're in. So once again, I'm excited to have all of you here. If you'd like to join me on this stage, please just raise your hand so that you can join me, and so I can also hear your perspective. But I'd love to share my thoughts on the top 3 leadership trends I think are going to be coming through that people are going to need to keep in mind this year. I will definitely say that my perspective is definitely shaped by the global work that I do. So even though I live in Ghana, so I live in Accra, Ghana, as I mentioned before, I do work with leaders all around the world. So from my perspective and the opportunity I've had to work with leaders across the board, so across different organizations, also at different levels, these are the 3 things that I see really coming up in both my coaching conversations and also in the conversations I'm having with the decision makers, so the leaders of leaders as well. So the first thing that really comes through, I think, and I'm looking forward once again to hearing everyone's perspective on this and their thoughts on the top trends. But from my perspective, I think the first is really going to be around being able to step up into that hybrid leadership position. And I think alongside being that hybrid leader, one of the conversations I've been having quite a bit is the importance of visibility, because with hybrid work, you're not always there physically. So making sure the right people see you, you're saying the right things in the right room, you're saying it in the right way, right? With the right tools, I think is going to become even more important as some organizations decide to go back to the office and other organizations continue to stay remote, or some combination of the both. So that for me, I think is really number one. And in terms of the conversations I've been having, I think that's going to be a key trend and a key thing for any leader to have to keep in mind. So that's really my number one. My number 2 is it's going to become even more important for employees to be able to connect to their personal why. And I'm actually right now working on several leadership programs where this is a key component of what we're doing. And so what that means is values-based leadership is going to become even more important. And I think it's going to be an important trend in 2023. So having conversations with your direct reports around, what engages them, what motivates them, what's important to them. I think it's going to become increasingly more important this year. And what's going to happen is organizations and leaders that consider this and keep this in mind will be able to increase their retention rate, right? People are going to be a lot more excited to work for those organizations and feel a lot more aligned and are more likely to stay. So that's really the second sort of thing I think that's important to keep in mind for 2023, and something I'm seeing with the coaching work that I'm doing right now. And the last thing I have here, and this is something that I saw also starting last year. I think it started also during the pandemic, but the last point I have here in terms of leadership trends for 2023 is meetings. I actually wrote down in my notes, meetings, meetings, meetings. I think that a lot of organizations and a lot of leaders are going to be rethinking how they collaborate, how they make decisions, not just because there are some people who are going to be at home and some people who are going to be in the office, but just in general, because I think for so many of us, there is sort of decision fatigue, maybe even collaboration fatigue potentially. And, leaders really, especially those in the hybrid space, are going to have to come up with better models, better ways of being able to engage all their employees, whether they're there physically or they're there remotely. And so I think that meetings and rethinking them, reimagining them, making sure that they really work and are driving either decisions or they're driving brainstorming, they truly are strategic, is going to become very important in 2023. All right. So those are just some of my thoughts on the trends that I'm seeing and the things I think they're going to be important for this year. So once again, hybrid leadership as it relates especially to visibility, values-based leadership, especially as it relates to making sure that people are connected to their personal why and what that means for them as they show up in that organization. And then last but not least, really rethinking decision-making, collaboration, and how we come together to really decide what to do next. All right. So once again, I'd love to open it up. Anyone have any questions? Anyone have any thoughts? Anyone want to join me on the stage? Hello, Happy New Year.
Hey, Akua.
Hello, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining.
Absolutely. My first reason here to be here is to support you. I kind of figured this was your first audio event and I wanted to be here to support you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I love the topic and the three things that you've called out, hybrid leadership, values-based leadership, and also the ways of working, and especially as it pertains to collaboration. What I wanted to add to this was the two things. One is our better understanding of intersectionality when it comes to the general DEI space, I think becomes very important. And it hits on all three of the points that you've raised. How our identities, how we bring them to work and how we show up, there's a lot of this talk around bringing our whole selves to work. What does it really mean and how does it look like for different people with different backgrounds? And inclusion is one thing, but I always say if you're included, it doesn't mean you're really welcome. So how do we bridge that gap from diversity to inclusion to really belonging? Because that, I think, plays a big role in building people up in the workplace. When belonging is in place, when people feel like they truly belong, your physical location becomes immaterial. That's been my experience. So I think that from a hybrid leadership and a values-based leadership, especially, creating that sense of belonging and also in us as individuals, owning our own space and using our sense of agency, I think will become even more important.
I love what you've shared. You can't see it, but I've been nodding my head this entire time. I would love for you maybe to share your perspective on how to create belonging, maybe even especially within the remote space, because I think for so many organizations, that's really something that they're struggling with. But, with the expertise that you have and the work that you do, especially with technology leaders, what thoughts or advice do you have for individuals trying to do that and leaders who really want to have that remote opportunity, but they're not sure how to create that belonging?
Absolutely, Akwa. And I think a couple of things that I have done personally, and I've worked with leaders that have done this very well, is scheduling time for, I'm using air quotes, water cooler chats. I think that given one of the um, challenges we've faced with remote work, especially in the COVID and post-COVID world, and this is true more true in some geographies than others. I've seen that because like you, I work with, I do virtual coaching, so I work with folks from around the world, and I've seen the difference in how easily, let me rephrase it. In some geographies and cultures, it's easier to lay down your boundaries and stick to them than others. And so, as leaders, one of the things that folks can do to help build that sense of belonging is set aside time to meet with people that work with you, with your teams, where your meetings are not absolutely no work. Do like I know virtual happy hours and things like that are sort of probably overused, but when done right, there's a lot of value in that. Connecting with people at a human level and giving people that opportunity to share their experience. And again, doesn't matter where you're located. The second thing while doing that is being mindful of what time zones your people are in, and how you're able to find the time zone that works for everyone. And I think the best way to do all this is to start off with a sort of working agreement for the team where everyone calls out and talks about what times work best for them, what's the best time for them for meetings, when do they do their best work, how do they ask for help and things like that. Just having that sort of rubric, if you will, available, and then working around that. So being available for water cooler chats, making sure that you're connecting with people as human beings first and not just their job roles or titles. And thirdly, being consistent. So I've been in situations where I would host these whatever virtual happy hours or virtual coffee, and maybe just one person would show up. But that's fine. I would show up week after week if that's how the schedule is. So I would stick to my schedule, and eventually people would show up. So I think being consistent, connecting with people as human beings, and creating those spaces and times for conversations other than work.
I love that. So a bit of intentionality and then a sort of a system that you build around it so people can actually count on that. And I love that. And I think ultimately that's also how you build that psychological safety with that consistency as well. And if you show your team members that you care about them outside of just the results that you're driving and the things that you're trying to achieve, I also think it's a lot easier to get them to do things they never thought they'd be able to do, right? That one time when they need to work a little extra, a little harder, they're going to be willing to do that for you, right? Because they have, and you understand them a lot more. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one last thing I want to add, which ties back to the values-based leadership point that you made, connecting to the personal why. Reiterating the organizational mission, vision, objective to, and tying it back to that individual's work and their effort and helping them see how what they're doing, however unrelated it may seem or minuscule it may seem, how it is connected and how it rolls up to the organizational vision and objective. May it be on a large scale, or maybe it could be even project specific. In my personal experience, that has helped a lot. So it's, when you're doing your work, when you're in the sort of eye of the storm, if you will, it's hard to see how your work is creating impact at a larger level. And I think it's one of the most important leadership responsibilities to help people see that. And that also plays a big role in building that sense of belonging, because you're really building community at work. It's not just about, I often talk about transforming your teams from being co-workers to being a community.
I love that. Yes. So reminding them about how these different elements connect, right? We're spending so much time at work. It should be as meaningful and impactful as it can be. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate your contribution. I always appreciate your support. So thank you so much. All right. I see Folake. Amazing. Happy New Year. Glad to see you. Thank you so much for joining. What was it that you wanted to share?
Hey, Aqua, good to see you.
Yes.
I saw you post this on the ICF WhatsApp group, and I'm like, oh my God.
I'm so glad you're here.
Yes. Same here. Well, it's a Friday. I am sitting in front of my laptop, and I think that brings me to the exact point that I'm about to make. And, thank you, Meenakshi, for your point.
Yes.
I think that's something that I really, really totally aligned with on the first 3 points that you made as well. But of course, partly the reason that I'm in front of my laptop today, Aqua, is we will see again in 2023 a trend that had already started in 2022, and not just the fact that hybrid work, not just remote work, but the fact that hybrid work, and again, this is also from my dealings as a certified executive coach and and as a career strategist as well, especially for women of color who really want to take complete control. So hybrid work will continue, but I think we will see the side hustle, or the second job, as it were, reign supreme. That is not going to stop. People are going to want to connect to, people are going to want to have the best of both worlds, by the way, without any apologies. So people like me so it's not just because the gig economy, Aqua, has boomed over the past few years, and trust me, it's not slowing down. But think about it, the strain of inflation, the fact that, we are having a lot more Gen Zers, who are becoming more entrepreneurial, even while they're in school, means that, hey, taking a side hustle is not going to be a big deal anymore. So I have a conflict of interest agreement with my, with my current employer.
Yes, I love that you brought that up. Yes.
Yeah, and we have an agreement around it. But the thing about it, we will see more of those agreements. We will see perhaps a relaxing of those agreements, knowing that, okay, because you work with P&G, Microsoft, Diageo, and so on and so forth, does not mean that you are just one person. We are many people. There are so many parts of us, and that's why today I can be a regional HR director in a global tech environment.
Yes.
But I can also be an executive coach that speaks to my calling, my purpose, my passion. And I'm just not ready to let those two go. And this is in addition to wanting to join a university faculty one day. This is in addition to my speaking career, as well. So the side hustle isn't going anywhere, and it will stop being a secret. It will become mainstream, where people are able to say, yeah, this is what I do for a living. I do this, and I do this, and I do this. And yes, I'm able to combine everything because I have so-and-so support system, and so on and so forth. So the side hustle will become the main hustle, like somebody puts it.
I love that.
For people. So yeah, that's one of the things that I wanted to say. I have two more, but I guess as we go along, I can also chip that in.
No, I would love for you to continue to contribute. So those of you who are here, Folake is actually, she's a big madame. So not only does she have her own coaching and consulting practice, right? She also is, a massive human within, a structured environment as well. So to hear her say that this is really something that she's seeing, I think is incredible. So please continue. What else are you seeing?
Thank you. The second one, again, just from the trends from last year. So you know how quite a number of us, right, have become, well, I mean, not just from the Me Too movement and so on and so forth, but the cry out for mental health, the attention that it has received. You know, I read it somewhere and it totally resonated, just looking at my life since COVID and how even as a coach, as a wife, as a mom, I had to embrace therapy, you know, only because I thought, my gosh, how am I going to be able to cope with all of these balls, you know, through all of this? So we probably will see that mental health checkup become the annual physical.
I love that.
You know, or should I say a very big part of the annual physical. You know, so it's not just the mental health crisis of today is extremely real. I see it in my life, I mean, having to pay more attention to it. I see it in the life of my teenagers. You know, I have one 21 and one 18. And I can tell you, it's something for them that's mainstream. Now, you would think that it was a joke from the beginning because they talk about it so much. They talk about their triggers. They talk about, you know, but we're not going to hide, you know, we're not going to hide about it anymore. Routine mental health screenings are going to become a thing. It's not just the fact that, oh, you know, Aqua mentioned the other day that she was depressed. A collective of medical experts are beginning to say that, you know what, regular anxiety checkups during physicals are now a must, you know, and if I look at it, believe it or not, the parents, as a senior exec, I have to embrace that as part of also, you know, just my team meeting agendas to make sure I'm paying extra attention to mental health. So my team meetings are not just your usual, so what's the number? Where's the analysis? Where are we going? What's the retention number? What's the talent review? Blah, blah, blah. No, I start with a very relaxed atmosphere, building the right environment. If I'm doing that as a leader, it's not just the fact that we have to pay medical attention to it, we're having to pay leadership attention to it as well. That's not going anywhere. It's going to continue, you know, and it is going to pull on the leader, who then, of course, needs to also then pay attention to their medical health, their adaptability, flexibility, emotional intelligence, and so on and so forth. So definitely a big one that I know that we will see.
I love that.
Time.
Yeah.
The third, thank you, Aqua. The third and final for me, I read it somewhere, almost a taboo, you know.
Okay.
Should I say maybe a lot of stigma around it? But when I saw it, I was like, I practically almost started clapping. I was applauding when I saw this particular article talk about it. But we're hearing more and more about it. Menopause will become.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay. Tell us more.
Because guess what? A lot of us that went into mainstream environments, that started our careers, right, years ago, and then we started to grow through the chain. The DEIs. It means that we can actually bring anything to the table to talk about. Things that used to be right in the background, right? And what we're saying now is that not just from a medical point of view, you know, but we're saying that menopause is growing, I mean, mainstream because yet again, it's another thing to talk about. It's a conversation. So in the past, it was probably considered as, you know, no, don't go there, you know, shameful, you know, just not as mainstream, you know. But guess what? The demographics is changing.
Yes.
We're having more faces that are more popular around it. Michelle Obama is you know, talking about it. And what it means is that if we look at the numbers alone, what is happening is that a lot more organizations are starting to capitalize on the menopause conversations as well. You know, because guess what? We are still here as executives.
Yes.
We're very vocal. We are coaching a community of women who are not afraid to share their stories. In fact, a lot of the times that they come for coaching is because there's a lot going on the inside and the outside. So we're going to pay more attention to it. People are quitting their jobs because of this. People are not knowing what to do next, because it is affecting both the physical and the mental, as well. And hold on, if we're talking about global diversity, equity, and inclusion, of course, menopause also becomes a conversation that needs to be on the table. Thank you, Aqua.
Yes, I love it. I absolutely love everything you've shared. And I think what you're really connecting to or bringing up is the importance of being emotionally, physically, mentally, and if it also something that resonates with you spiritually there, right? Really being able to bring somewhat, right? This is going to resonate with some of you, but your whole self to work. And organizations need to start to realize that they're more than males in the workplace, right? And so those of us who are female, right, we might show up a little bit differently. And so it's time to really start to consider that as we're thinking about how we put together compensation packages, or think about even what the workplace looks like if it's a physical workplace. So I love all of that. Thank you so much, Folake.
Thank you, Aqua.
So Meredith, I saw you clapping there for a second. Welcome to the stage, and everyone who is, who's here, you're more than welcome to join us on the stage as well and contribute. But Meredith, please, I look forward to hearing your thoughts and predictions.
Oh, thank you so much. And Folake, that was a mic drop moment.
Yes.
That's why I was clapping.
Yes.
That is so true. I mean, even when you look, in wide stream, consumerism, you see so many products for menopause, but you didn't see those years ago, and you could get it easily online. It's not a taboo. People are talking about it and discussing it, and it should definitely be part of the workplace conversation. I think that's, amazing point. Everything you said was just like amazing. I don't even know what to say after everything you just shared. But what I will say is that I think that a lot of large companies, also are responding to inflation and rising costs. And
yes.
So, of course, there's this huge piece on workforce development, upskilling and right skilling, and kind of closing the layers of leadership. Everybody's trying to figure out how to do more with less, as well as workforce reduction is happening. And so, of course, that's leading to, more entrepreneurship and things like that. I have an organization of about 800 people that I'm responsible for. And I think listening to both of you women leaders speak, it's like, how do you proliferate, the idea of belonging into large organizations? How do you really get underneath people's, talent reviews and really understand what the needs are? And, so that's one part of it. And then upstream, how does the larger organization, HRs, really respond to that? Because I feel in my own experience, I think my organization, we're lucky. I have an amazing SVP, and she's a heart-centered leader. And so, within our organization, I think we do a pretty good job. But the overall arching organization sometimes doesn't have the same kind of ideals practiced in a way that we do. So how do we? I guess my question might be, how do we, myself and my SVP, really take the ideas that we have proliferated through our organization in these very strained times, and it's times of transition and running to be digital first, and really supporting our organization while there may be still some work to do with belief systems up top.
Wow. Thank you so much for those thoughts, Meredith. I agree. I think a lot of projects I've been on have been around future-proofing, leadership and future-proofing employees. And like you said, doing more with less. I love your question, and I'd love to ask the audience, does anyone have a perspective they'd like to share with Meredith, Meenakshi, Folake? Would any of you like to share a thought with Meredith on, trying to proliferate? I love that word, belonging. Meenakshi, please.
Yes, thank you. And Folake and Meredith, it was just absolutely wonderful to hear your thoughts. And I was furiously making notes here. I want to respond to Meredith's question. I want to say two things. One is focusing on the middle managers. And I'm biased towards middle managers. That's who I focus on in my work. I think that middle managers, mid-career professionals and leaders, they're amongst the least supported within organizations in terms of structured learning and development, professional development programs. And this is in my independent research and my own experience. This is true across geographies, across companies, regardless of size of company or industry. There's usually a lot of support for people just graduating from college, fresh graduates. Larger companies have programs that to manage their intake and get them ready for work. More companies that can afford that have budgets, they actually support their executive leaders with coaching and one-on-one coaching and very specialized professional development. And I think most people in the corporate space tend to forget about the middle managers. I often say that middle managers and mid-career professionals and leaders end up doing double duty, because actually triple duty if you look at it. They're responsible for people that report to them. They're responsible towards the people that lead them. And they're somehow in all of this, they have to find time for their own self-growth and development so that they remain relevant. Anytime there's a layoff, middle managers are the first ones to go. Roles such as project managers, they are the first ones to go. Because, and what often gets forgotten in corporate settings is that it is this set of people that are the glue to the organization. They're the ones that keep the organization running and humming, but more often than not, they end up in what is considered as, let's trim the fat. They fall in that category because they are the ones who are actually orchestrating the whole people process side of the house, and they're often ignored. So invest in middle managers, invest in coaching. The reason I focus on coaching for middle managers and mid-career leaders is, why wait until you get them to a leadership position and then try to fix them, right? A lot of times coaching is treated as a remedial measure. It's not. Coaching is moving from good to great. So focus on middle managers, introduce coaching as early as possible in your employees' life cycle with the company. Those are my two responses to Meredith's question. And I also wanted to, couple of things that Folake pointed out, it reminded me, I wanted to offer everyone two book titles. I've not read them, I've read about them and I watched videos about from the authors. One is called Work Without Jobs, How to Reboot Your Organization's Work Operating System. It's written by Ravin Jesadasan and John Boudreau. Ravin Jesadasan, if you follow him on LinkedIn, he's done a whole book tour about this, and his talks are absolutely fantastic. He's with Mercer, the HR consulting company. The whole point, the crux of this book is, we traditionally understand work as a job and workers as job holders. How do you redefine work without jobs? In the sense, you have to really look at digital transformation. So you're looking at technology taking over our jobs. We are working alongside robots and chatbots and whatnot. So how do you deconstruct work as we understand it and reconstruct it in a way where we are working alongside technology? So it's a great book, Work Without Jobs. The second one of the things that Folake had said, it brought to mind stolen focus in the context of mental health and all that. So this book is called Stolen Focus. That's just coming out. It's written by Johan Hari. It talks about, and he intentionally has chosen the title Stolen Focus, and he talks about it. I watched an interview of his. He says, we haven't lost our focus. We have allowed technology and other things around us to steal it from us. So how do we bring it back? And, multitasking is overrated and unnecessarily glorified. The human brain, as we know it, is not wired to do that. So how do we bring back monotasking? How do we bring back paying attention and thinking deeply? I think it has a huge, not doing that right away as soon as possible has huge repercussions on our mental health and on our ways of working and the future of work as a whole. So those are some things I wanted to call out. Thank you again for this opportunity. It's just so wonderful to hear everyone here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Does anyone else have any thoughts for Meredith? Anyone from, just listening, you're more than welcome to raise your hand. I'd love to have you on stage. Does anyone else have any other questions? Would love to hear from all of you. All right. Well, from my perspective, Meredith, I think that when it comes to, culture change, really just recognizing that, the easiest way forward is to get buy-in. I also agree that middle managers are a really great place to start, and a really, I think, important component of an organization to nurture, most importantly, because a lot of times they're the ones who are doing the work or making things work. So creating programs so they have a clear understanding of the way forward, of the mission, of the vision, it aligns with what they're also looking to do personally, I think can take an organization really far. But I think at all levels of an organization, there needs to be some thought that's put into how they engage with this mission or this concept of belonging and what it looks like at each level. Because I think that this concept of belonging is going to look very different when you're an entry-level employee versus a middle manager, versus a VP, versus someone who's at the top, right? You might not really think about belonging in the same way. So also getting really clear on that definition of belonging and making sure that you're creating opportunities, activities, and nurturing each level of employee, I think can really be a supportive way to move forward, and a way to really create a culture that's inclusive and respects diversity as well. So those are.
I think that's well said. I think belonging sort of at the front line, especially at my company, looks very differently when you get to the director and above roles. I think that there's much less belonging happening at the director and above roles than there is at frontline or even middle management, to say the least. So, I am interested in, I've talked to my colleagues as well, is really getting folks who are in that director and above space together frequently throughout the year to really just talk about what our struggles can look like and how do we actually navigate our careers upward if that's where we're intending to go, and how do we keep our desire to remain mission driven and to support those more junior in their career and have that, and be that mentor that folks need as they're navigating their own careers, but still finding that same strength as we're looking forward, because as we look forward, there's less and less people of color in those roles. And so that belonging is much different at that level.
Yeah. And actually what comes to mind, what you just shared, is also, I think, a bit of employer branding as well. I think some organizations are doing some really interesting things where they're sort of re-engaging their employees depending on what level they are and encouraging them to build their personal brands as well, right? Because I think that also helps employees to recognize in some people's mind that might seem somewhat manipulative, but this idea of they care about me as an individual as well, and it's to the benefit of the organization, right? That this is what's coming across to them. Just a thought. All right. Thank you so much for that, Meredith. So there's a few of you who are still here. There's obviously some value that you're getting. I'd love to know, do you have a question? Do you have any additional thoughts that you would like to add? Maybe for those of you who joined a little bit later, we started off with just sort of sharing our thoughts about what are some of the trends we think are going to be important in relation to leadership. So on my end, I shared the importance of sort of hybrid leadership, especially as it relates to visibility, right? When you're working remotely, visibility is going to look different than when you're working in an office, and how to make sure that you are not only able to see everyone, but giving everyone an opportunity also to engage with you as well. I think that's going to be increasingly important this year. I also shared the importance from my perspective of values-based leadership, really giving individuals and employees the opportunity to connect what they're doing with their personal why, I think will be very important. And organizations that are able to do this well are going to be able to retain their employees. And then the last thought I had was really, organizations I think are going to start rethinking their collaborative environments, how they make decisions, and most importantly, meetings in general. So the last point I had on here was meetings. I think that in 2023, we're going to see a lot of different ideas around what a meeting should look like, who should be in meetings, and whether or not meetings are needed at all, right? And also sort of bringing in some of the things that we learned during the pandemic, asynchronous meetings, right? You know, doing video. Do we need as many people chatting on Slack and those elements? All right. So those were some of the thoughts I shared. Some additional things that came through were the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion. You know, the importance of, you know, mental health is going to continue to be important. The fact that a lot of organizations, you know, are sort of saving their pennies, right? They don't necessarily have as much to invest. So how can they do more with less? And those were just some of the things that came through with some of the other individuals that joined me on this stage. So once again, I'd love to open it up. Does anyone have anything else they'd love to contribute? Any questions they have, maybe that the rest of us can support them with? All right. Meenakshi, allowed to speak. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Akwas. That last question and the last point that you made about meetings and asynchronous work, you know, what I wanted to add there was asynchronous work. We can't. That's going to become more and more prevalent, given the nature of the workforce, given how you can't expect folks to just do one job anymore, like Folake was talking about earlier, and. So it's more about work-life integration as opposed to work-life balance. And so as more and more people exercise their right to work when they can and still in a meaningful way and continue to add value, we're going to find that these traditional expectations of the workplace are no longer valid. And we're also going to see a big shift in the age group that's going to be predominantly in the workplace. And so it's shifting individual preferences and choices. There's a huge focus on that. And people are becoming more and more courageous to state that openly. And so asynchronous work is going to be one of the foundational aspects of success. And for that to be successful, there needs to be a lot of trust among people and creating trust. And I'm quoting one of my mentor coaches who said, trust enables speed.
I love that.
In a business environment, right? So, and it goes back to core human skills of how do you show up? How do you relate with others? How do you communicate? When do you do your best work? How do you do your best work? How do you ask for help? And things like that. And really going back to those core human skills of having these conversations with one another to understand this so that you are able to operate from that space of empathy and respect. I think this will, and these are so hard to measure and articulate. These look very intangible, but all these intangibles collectively create tangible organizational and individual success. So to your point about asynchronous work, I foresee that as becoming a necessary skill.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. All right. Well, I think that's all we have for today. Thank you all so very much once again for joining me for my first LinkedIn audio event. I really appreciate it. I don't take your time, your energy, your ears for granted. If you enjoyed this conversation, please let me know what you enjoyed about it. If you would like to join me next week, I am looking for guest speakers. My hope is really to put together some sort of lineup of conversations that really are all about making sure that leaders are able to step up in 2023. So hopefully I'll see many of you next week. If you have a specific question you'd like me or any of the amazing individuals that I hope to attract, I hope to ring in to these conversations, please drop me a line, send me a DM. You're also welcome to comment on this post as well. There will be a post that's sort of created afterwards. So please make sure you do that. There will be a recording. I will probably send it out tomorrow, depending on how the rest of my day goes, because it is 4 p.m. for me. But just thank you all so very much for joining me. Please make sure that you take the time to follow some of the amazing speakers that we had today. Thank you so much, Meenakshi. Thank you so much, Folake. Thank you so much, Meredith. Really appreciate your contributions and the fact that you joined me. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Friday and have an amazing weekend. Thank you again. Bye, everyone.